Energy is known as adenosine triphosphate, which is made up of 3 phosphate ions. ATP is the only thing in your body which can make muscles contract, as it has high energy bonds between the adenosine and the three phosphate molecules. ATP binds to the myosin heads of the muscle fibers to give them energy to contract the muscle by making and breaking the last phosphate ion of the ATP molecule to produce adenosine diphosphate. This will generally compensate for the first 3 seconds of exercise. The function of energy systems is to bond the last phosphate ion back onto the ADP molecule in order to resynthesize it for more muscle contraction. Each of the energy systems are used to resynthesize ATP during different activities. This can be determined by many features. Each system has a different duration, as some may last for hours whereas others may only last a few seconds. The intensity varies. Also, as 2 systems work at high intensities, the other 2 work at low intensity. The other one works at a low intensity. So when performing a slow 1500 meter jog, you won't want to be working at such high intensities as you would be working as if you were doing a 100 meter sprint. Some of these systems can also link to 2 criteria together. For example, if there's any oxygen present and the duration. If there are high amounts of oxygen present, then the duration will be long compared to if there was no oxygen, then the duration would be short. Enzymes in each system will be different, and it may break a bond at a slower rate than another, and each system produces a different amount of ATP. When the body uses each system, it may produce different waste products, which can affect the performance differently, as if they have available oxygen when the waste product is more likely to be carbon dioxide. If there is no oxygen, then there will be a buildup of lactic acid. When breaking off the last phosphate ion, this produces enough energy to last for 3 seconds. This is known as an exothermic reaction and is used when performing short, powerful movements. For example, when an athlete does a standing broad jump, they will be using just ATP, as the movement only lasts around 3 seconds. Another example is a standing shot put throw, as they can perform it in 3 seconds. The main function of the energy systems is to bond the last phosphate molecule back onto the now ADP molecule. There are 3 different energy systems. The first is the ATPP system, the next is the anaerobic glycolysis system, and lastly is the aerobic system. Both the ATPP system and the anaerobic glycolysis system are anaerobic, meaning they work without oxygen, whereas the aerobic system is aerobic, so does use oxygen. The ATPP system uses phosphocreatine, which is stored in the muscles, to resynthesize ATP. As it is stored in the muscles, this means that it is immediately available for use. The enzyme called creatine kinase is used to break the high energy bond between the phosphate molecule and the creatine molecule. When this bond is broken, it releases energy, which is then used to bond the phosphate ion back onto the ADP molecule, where there is lots of ADP present. When creating a bond using energy, it is called an endothermic reaction. These reactions lead to a couple reaction. This is a high-intensity yet short-duration process. Although the system can produce high-intensity movements, it will also lead to a high amount of lactic acid build-up in the muscles, which may become very painful. This process lasts for around 7 seconds, meaning that when joined with just the ATP, it can last for 10 seconds. This system is the most dominant, so will be the first to be recruited for any exercise. An event that would most likely use the ATPP system is a 100 meter sprint. For athletes, they would be able to run a 100 meter sprint in just over or under 10 seconds. This tells us that they are using their ATPP system. The first few steps of the race will most likely be just using ATP, then using their PC system for the remainder of the time. A 100-meter sprint is a high-intensity, short-duration event which makes the athlete work anaerobically, just like the ATP system. The next energy system is the anaerobic glycolysis system, also known as the lactic acid system. Glycolysis is the splitting of glycogen to glucose to release energy without using oxygen. Glycogen is stored in the muscles and liver, and the enzyme glycogen phosphorylase breaks it down into glucose. This glucose is then broken down into pyruvic acid by the enzyme phosphofructokinase. The pyruvic acid is then broken down into lactic acid by the enzyme lactate dehydrogenase. An increase of lactic acid in the muscles increases the acidity, which causes the enzymes to be inhibited and thus increasing fatigue and decreasing performance. This system has a net yield of 2 ATP, as it starts off with 2 ATPs and ends with 4. It is also has a duration of around 2 to 3 minutes. Our anaerobic glycolysis system works a lot slower than our ATP-PC system, but faster than our aerobic system. It has a short duration of 2 to 3 minutes, working at a maximal level. As said earlier, the ATP-PC system is the first energy system to be recruited. The lactic acid system is the next to be recruited. Once the lactic acid system can't go on anymore, the aerobic system takes over. This graph shows us that the next system begins working before the last system ends. In the 800 meters, an athlete would begin the race with their stored ATP for 3 seconds. Then the next 7 seconds would be using their PC system. This would take them a quarter of the way around the first lap. Now they would need to recruit their lactic acid system, which would last them for the rest of the race, although by the end, the athletes would have stiff, painful muscles due to the lactic acid buildup. For my data from the Wingate test, I can see that the athlete was using their ATP-PC system and their lactic acid system. For the first 10 seconds of the test, we can tell from our own understanding that the athlete was using their ATP-PC system. The blood lactate levels before the test were 1.5, but increased to 4.7 after the test. This tells us that after 10 seconds of using the ATP-PC system, the performer must have used their lactic acid system. We know this because lactic acid is a byproduct of anaerobic glycolysis and therefore will increase blood lactate levels. So the performers increase blood lactate so that they must have used their lactic acid system. When the athlete starts the multi-stage fitness test, they'll be using their ATP system. As this system is dominant at the start of any exercise, it will last for 3 seconds, allowing the athlete to make their first few strides. Then the PC system reattaches the phosphate to the ADP to make more ADP, which will allow the athlete to run for another 7 seconds, which will last them approximately the next length. Now the intensity is increased, forcing your body to change to the aerobic system. The levels of difficulty increase, and then the aerobic system becomes too slow, forcing your body to change to the ATP-PC system, to the lactic acid system. Sorry, I meant that it changes from the aerobic system to the lactic acid system. Again, we can see that this is from the gradual increase in lactic acid values from 1.5 to 18. The blood lactate for this test is higher because the performer used lactic acid system for a longer duration and therefore allowing more lactic acid to build up. In a game of netball, all 3 systems will be present. A player is likely to use their ATP system when passing a ball or jumping. This is because it's a short explosive movement that lasts for 3 seconds. However, the player is also likely to use their lactic acid system throughout the match. When the player is sprinting to get into space, they'll be using their lactic acid system. This is because they are still completing an explosive high-intensity movement, although it may last longer than 10 seconds. Lastly, the player will also use their ATP-PC system when intercepting a pass. This is because it is a short duration but high intensity. The interception is likely to last longer than 3 seconds due to the run-up and the jump that is unlikely to take longer than 10 seconds. Thank you for listening. This is my reference.